Well, hey everyone. I'm excited today to have a conversation with a new functional role that many of us have been hearing about, but very few people actually understand, which is why we've brought together today two forward deployed engineers to help us all understand what does this function actually do? How does it add value to companies? And what might someone need to think about if they are on a journey to hiring a forward deployed engineer? We are the product recruiter, and we help technology companies, often startups and scale ups, make really strategic hires in their product organizations. And lately, so many of the clients we've been talking with and working with have this role, the role of a forward deployed engineer, on their hiring roadmaps in 2026. So that's why we're having this conversation. And so before we get started, I'd love our two guests to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their background and what they've been working on lately. Krystaleah?
Thanks, Heidi. I'm Krystaleah. I've been programming for 15 years, mostly in Java. And my background is basically I have a bachelor's in IT. I became a very good business analyst as a result of that. And I was also interested in project management. And I wanted to do that after, let's say, about a 5-year software engineering career. And so, towards the end of my degree, the tables turned, and I ended up doing an applied AI course. And through that course, I became a basically an AI forward deployed engineer at IBM. And through that experience, I really loved it and I decided to go fully into AI. So I did my master's in AI at the Schulich School of Business. And towards the end, I got an opportunity to land a few other roles similar to FDE, if not actually an FDE. And most recently, I was an FDE at a small startup of 3 to 4 people where I owned an impact assessment for GHG emissions in supply chains. And as of right now, I'm actually at Udacity and I am teaching Java and I will be teaching AI governance as well.
Wow. Hao, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Hao. I have a traditional education coming from electrical and computer engineering. I worked in variety of projects from embedded system, telecommunication, mobile development, mobile application development, cloud computings. Recently, I am part of the AWS organization as a customer-facing engineer, helping customers to integrate a specialized cloud solution into their services.
And Dilsher?
Beautiful. Yes. Well, let's kick it off with something that'll help set the stage for us a little bit. If we can get you folks to describe in one sentence, if that's possible, what a forward deployed engineer is. And maybe we'll start with you this time, How.
Sounds good. Forward deployed engineer, or it may have many other names. For example, customer success engineers, or the traditional engineering, so some of them are called field application engineers. It's basically engineering role that understand the core product, core engineering, but also understand the customer's needs. Basically marrying what our customer wants to do with the solution the company is providing.
Got it. Krystaleah?
Yeah, an FTE to me is someone that can span the whole software development lifecycle, such as requirements management, design, build, integration, deployment, and especially in a startup environment, you sit on the client team and own the product's deployment.
So I'm wondering how, if you could maybe expand a little bit on what you started to share about the relationship of an FDE and kind of the that relationship with product or the customer teams. Like, what kinds of problems would a forward deployed engineer solve that the product or the customer team wouldn't? Like, how does all of that work, that relationship?
Sure. Um, Many company produce their own product or services for their prospective customers. Oftentimes, They're not consumer themselves. Of course, they're selling their services to a customer, and customer, of course, have their own requirements. For deployed engineer, really bridging the gaps between when the product is ready and the customer is launching their own application using your product. So for the deployed engineer comes in, assess the requirements, also the project scope, being able to understand the real life situations, and being able to bring the customer feedback also into the core product team to enhance their services so that customer can use them with ease. In this case, there is a little bit of technical liaison type of work, as well as engineering work that for deploy engineer need to do to make sure the customer can focus on their business while we as technology providers harden our product to support them without them worrying what type of technology that's being provided.
Interesting. You know, part of that reminds me of many, many years ago when we used to do searches for like almost client-facing implementation engineer teams. Like there's a little bit of that in there. You know, titles change, but at the heart, every company wants their customer to be successful, right? Every customer wants their customers to be raving fans and never churn out. And I think that's the piece that this role really ensures that's being delivered. Dilsher, over to you.
Yes. So I'm curious to hear about some kind of a real world example of what you might have delivered or what kind of problems you might have been working on. Understanding that you can't name customers, what is it that you can share with us that gives us a clear picture and a real example of what you've done?
Sure. Can use an example of a live streaming video product that the customer would use to create their own, for example, TikTok-like experience, a live streaming fun engagement type of experience. Typically, all the customer wanted to do is make an application that have scrolling videos, live engagement from the audience, between the audience and the streamers. However, the customer have no idea how the video technology works, whether, from the codecs to latencies, to video resolutions, and how accurate the video being represented on the mobile phone screen. So this is where the forward deployed engineer comes in to help our customers to provide. One is to assess the scope, assess the technical requirements and any technical gaps. So that can be brought back to the core engineering team to harden their product. The second is to educate the customers about the best practices so they can choose the optimized configurations or solutions when they're integrating the product. So the customer can really focus on creating the experience they want instead of worrying about every single nitty-gritty video configurations. So I've worked in many similar type of engagement that enable the customers to integrate so they can focus on creating the experience they want without thinking about the actual technical complexity behind the scenes.
Got it. It's interesting. You can see the echoes of a customer success engineer, like you mentioned, but you can tell that you sit a lot more on the product management side of the spectrum than just building what the client needs. You're actually a little bit more forward thinking than that.
Correct. If I may add a little bit more, I think there is project management type of work involved, customer relationship management type of involved, but you also have engineering knowledge involved, engineering practice involved to help the customer, because this is where the theory meets the reality. Sometimes you deploy something to the customer sites and things doesn't work as expected because customer have different type of user base, different type of environment, different type of network profiles, so on and so forth.
Got it. I am curious, a quick aside, how much of your time then in this role do you spend actually building software or actually coding?
It really varies. In some engineering heavy engagement, I'll be helping the customers to integrate the solution, meaning coding alongside with the customers, or sometimes providing demo applications, samples, even debug together with the customer. And in certain case, of course, there's a bit less because some customers prefer to have a more consultative approach.
Got it. All right. Well, that brings us to the next question, which is, what signs would indicate that a founder needs a forward deployed engineer in your opinion, in your experience? At what's the timing? What's the problem? What's the stage of the company or the product where they would think about hiring an FDE?
Yes, so I'll take that one. So, from my experience, especially with startups, I've noticed that there's a lot of value in having an FTE because they can wear a lot of hats. So, you have an engineer that has experience with project management, design, building, deployment as well, and they're able to own that so that it's off of the hands of the founder as opposed to them having to deal with that and manage that. And I also realize that, the a lot of the times the founders they need to actually work on getting the customers, they need to work on marketing, all those things. So we take that load off of their shoulders. And another thing is the customers, they want to buy in, but a lot of times the deployment may not be there. So I'll give you an example. So my recent role, we had well, the company, when I came into the company, they had an Excel file that did the work for them. And so I had to completely digitize the basically the application logic and deploy it onto something that was easily accessible by users and internal users for testing. So things like that, customers, they want to buy in, but I don't think a customer would want to buy an Excel file. That's a lot that brings a lot of value. And so an FDE is somebody you can bring in, or even maybe two FDEs you can bring in to solve a situation like that, like digitization, operationalization of a tool in the company.
I
Gotcha.
I don't want to jump in there. Dilsher, did you have a
Mhm.
follow-up?
The only other follow-up, because Krystaleah, you mentioned you were at a pretty early stage company. I think you said 3 or 4 employees.
Yeah.
From a recruiting perspective, I'm curious, were you reporting into the founder? Was there a CPO? Was there a CTO? Like, what does the leadership for an FDE look like?
Yeah, so funnily enough that you asked that. So since the startup was very small, as an FDE, I kind of was more in a consulting level type of role. So it was more consulting based as opposed to where you have an FDE team or you have like a product team, customer team. For me, it was very much I have to own the whole tool by myself and collaborate with the founder, the project manager, and then sometimes they had a designer. So that's why I said it's between 3 to 4 people at a time. And so a lot of the role was actually almost like I would say senior executive level, senior management because you have to collaborate with the CEO about compliance metrics, things like that. You have to convince them, should we actually include security? Should we include governance if you're using AI into the tool and, convince them why, explain this is the value of security, this is the value of governance, this is the risks, things like that. So not only in a small startup, because like I said, you have to wear a lot of hats when it is a smaller startup like that, it's valuable to have that project management experience as well because you have to deal with a lot of stakeholders who all have um, what's the word? Conflicting requirements. And so that's kind of where I think if you are to work for a smaller startup, you do have to be prepared for a lot more responsibility when it comes to being an FDE.
Well, what a great conversation today. That's a wrap, everyone. A special thank you to our two guests for illuminating what this function of a forward deployed engineer is and how it adds value to the business. And if this is something that you and your business are thinking about and want to talk about, you can discover more about us at theproductrecruiter.com. We'll include our coordinates below if you want to reach out and have that conversation. And in the meantime, we'll see you in the next video. Have a great day, everyone. Thanks so much.